My name is Rich Schmidt. We're here with Cara Pepper Day. It's March 12th, 2025. We're at the Nicholson Library at Linfield University in McMinnville. Cara, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
The first question we'll get things started with, why wine?
So I learned early that you work a lot. And so I wanted to pursue an industry that was fun and interesting. But, you know, wine, people are also really important to me. And I learned early that wine, it's the place, it's the people, it's a living thing. And so, initially it was that let's do something that's interesting. And then I learned that it was a really good fit because of all of that. And so I have a lot of things to share, and you're going to have to keep me kind of going in different directions because it's sort of, I'm not really sure where to start. But part of it is, so my dad had a construction company. Through high school, through college, my siblings and I worked for him. So I drove a bulldozer and checked grade and learned that I didn't want to do that, right? It was a great job. I mean, we made tons of money for back then for in high school and college. It was awesome. But I learned I did not want to take over the family construction business. But I never really learned what I wanted to do. I went to school here, right? I'm an alum, and I grew up in the Westland-Wilsonville area, and I'm a native Oregonian. I was actually third generation Westland graduate. Three of my grandparents, both my mom and dad and my stepdad all went to Westland. So, I mean, it's, I wanted to get away. This was far enough away, right? Family was important. It was far enough away, but I also felt like when I was done, I needed to go somewhere. And so I moved to Colorado for a couple of years afterward, and I didn't have a job. I knew a couple of people, but I got a temporary job working for a catering company, right? Doing catering, just hourly, whatever. And that was my first introduction, real introduction to food and wine. My parents didn't really drink wine. Even my family now, they still don't take advantage of, these wine connections, but that's a whole nother piece. And so I worked for this catering company called Michaels of Denver, and it was a chef owner, and he was this, total character, passionate, right? Most people in our industry are passionate. And I started to learn about food and wine. I then got this random job because my degree's in math. We can come back to that. But I got this first job, and I was a revenue accountant at an oil and gas company. None of that makes sense with me at all, and so it didn't last very long. It was a mutual this isn't the right fit. And then I got a job at an advertising company, which was fun, super fun, right? In your 20s. I worked in the media department, and which was buying media, print and TV and ad. But I wasn't buying. I was just doing the data entry, and that sucked. But I got to do some fun stuff because the department in general, we would get lots of tickets. And so during that time point, the Avs hockey team, Colorado Avs, they won the Stanley Cup. Got to go to some of those hockey games, went to a bunch of Rockies games, did a bunch of fun stuff. And that was where I kind of learned, you want to work somewhere that's fun. But it was just data entry, and so I ended up leaving there also. It was when you're young, you got to try a lot of things out. And so I ended up going back to this Michaels of Denver full time, and was doing event planning. And they had this really cool building that it was an old, I don't even, one of these old fraternal organizations. It was this really cool building, and we would have these crazy bar mitzvahs, and it was a whole wedding. Anyway, that was my intro to food and wine. I was out there just for a couple years. I moved back to Oregon, and that's when I kind of realized this is actually, we have a cool wine industry, and let's pursue it. And so I didn't have to look that hard for a job. I was hired as the GM. I mean, it was not a real GM. That was one of those jobs where you have a title, but you don't make any money, and you really don't have all the responsibilities. But it was a winery at the time called Dundee Springs, which is now the Four Graces. I joined the industry. I knew I needed to educate my palate. and I was going around and tasting at different tasting rooms, and I ended up at Willamette Valley Vineyards in Turner, the main location, and the tasting room manager at the time, her name was Camille Gonzalez. She like snatched me up. She basically like collected me. This has actually happened a couple times in my career where people like collect me. They're like, you need to work for me, and this is why. And I mean, I was learning a lot about wine, like, and there was, at that point, they made a lot of different wines, which not everywhere did. And so I was learning a ton. And at the same time, it was sort of like an interview, right? Where she's like, I need to convince her to come work here. And there was this little thing called health insurance. And it was, you're, again, in your 20s where you're still on your parents' insurance, but you're realizing that isn't going to last forever. And so I went to work at Willamette Valley Vineyards. And she hired me to manage the wine clubs and do events, which I'd already been doing events, right? And Willamette is this crazy place where there's a lot of, it's fast-paced. People that have ideas can execute on their ideas, and they can, make the vision and do it and go. And that's actually one of the strategies that Jim Bruneau has, is to find young people with a lot of energy that can accelerate, right? That can maybe do more than is expected for someone of that age. And I did that. And so I added additional wine clubs, some of which they still have now. I created events that they still have now. We created the Wine, Cheese, and Pear, there's another name at the end of it, Wine, Cheese, and Pear Celebration or something. It has some cute name that we came up with. But it was collaborating with the Cheese Board and the Pear Commission. We created a car show that they still do now. And so, kind of fun stuff like that. And my role, I was talking about wine all the time, and a total Jim Bruneau thing to do. He's like, want to travel? I'm like, I'm in my 20s, why not? And so I started traveling with the national sales team. And again, the role grew. I grew into become the national sales manager at a very young age. And I, was spending half of my time on the road. I mean, I was on the road 20 plus weeks a year. Jim is also very frugal. I'm frugal also though, and so it worked, it takes a whole day, right, to fly to the East Coast. So I would go for 2 weeks, right? You take a whole day, you get there. I would stay, I would travel, I would spend time with friends on the weekends, and then I would work again and then come home. I was gone for 2 weeks at a time, all the time. It was really fun though. I mean, I got to eat in the best restaurants in the country. I had some friends on the East Coast. I made some amazing friends. In your 20s, it's super awesome. I mean, it was a really great experience. And it was interesting in that we were building the Oregon brand, the brand for Willamette Valley, like the Valley, but also selling one brand. And so you're building this story. I'm a native Oregonian, and I could talk about all the things, right? I knew about. I had been doing tours for consumers forever. I had, take people out in the vineyard and tell them all about things. You talk about the Missoula Lake flood, all the things. It's the same stuff. You're just on the road selling, talking to distributors and to the, folks and the buyers in the industry, and but at the same time. So you're building this Oregon brand, but then they're also your competitors, right? Like, you're not at a restaurant, you're not going to have more than one Oregon Pinot Noir by the glass. And so it was always that fine line of doing that, right? That like there is this really cool camaraderie in the Oregon wine industry, but at the same time, like they're your competitors. And so that was always something that was kind of interesting to kind of work through. I made some notes. So we have 2 boys, and our oldest was really challenging. And so one of the biggest challenges when he was younger is he didn't sleep. So there's like a few years in my life where I don't really remember anything, because you don't remember things if you don't sleep. And we kind of joke a little bit because my husband and I met in like 3rd grade. We didn't go to high school together, but we, went through 8th grade together, and that was back before like concussion protocols. And so he had a lot of concussions in high school. So he doesn't really remember like junior high and high school. So I like remember those parts, and then he helps remember the parts when like our kids were young. So, but listening to all these interviews, I was like, oh, I should talk about this. Oh, and that person. And so anyway, maybe it's my liberal arts education. I wanted to come prepared.
We appreciate that.
A lot of the interviews are about what happens here, and there were a lot of people in the industry that helped in the distribution side build that Oregon story. And so I was like, I should talk about this. And so one of the people that was, again, Jim's really great about, Jim Renault is really great about finding those strategic relationships. And one of them was with Charlie Mironoff, who at the time it was Charmer, it became Charmer Sunbelt, which then became Breakthrough Beverage. And we aligned with them. We aligned with, we called them the Charmer houses then, and we sold so much wine. It was funny. I was listening, trying to catch up on more of your interviews, and there was one where Joe Dobbs goes, "Yeah, we were ramping up production in 01," and I was like, I sold 01 for almost 3 years, 01 Pinot Noir. So it's just like funny to like listen to some of these things, but that was, right when 9/11 happened, and then everything shut down, and people were traveling, and they had just ramped up this production. Oh my gosh, I sold that wine for so long. Libby Spencer and we sold that wine for a really long time, but we did it. We powered through. We sold all of it. But I wanted to call out, some specific names that were really people that were really fun to work with, and that helped build Oregon. And so. Charmer was in multiple states, but their home, their hub was in New York, right? And so in New York, there was this fine wine group. It was run by Matthew Green. And on that team there was a guy named Maurizio. There was this woman, Lisa Granick. She was a master of wine. Like, it was a really big deal. She might have actually been the first master of wine, but there weren't very many masters of wine anyway, and like none that were women. And then Richard Shipman, who became a very, very good friend. And, I was saying how I would go for 2 weeks. I would stay at their house. And Richard and Mary, I was like, they were older, but I was in between the age of like their kids. They have 4 kids, I think. And I would like sleep on their couch, and they lived in Newark, and so we would like ride the train into the city. We would sell tons of wine, and then we would go out to great dinners, and then we would ride the train back to Newark, and I'd like sleep on their couch, and we would drink like, we'd get home and like drink martinis or he introduced me to, we would drink gin and tonic, Hendrix and tonic. And Mary, like, right, they had 4 kids. Like, she was like, adult interaction. Like, you're in my house. Yes, come, please. And they always had great food. They always cooked so much good food. And they're dear friends. And I just adore them greatly. But there was one time when, I can't remember if he had gout or something, but like Richard was like hobbling, and I had broken my foot, and was in a walking cast because my doctor was my high school friend's dad, and he's like, I know how active you are. I'm putting you in a walking cast because you won't wear the boot. And I'm like, really? And I'm literally, I remember I bought 2 pairs of these shoes. They were these like cute slide-on patent leather shoes because I was only wearing the right, or I think it was my left foot, and I was only wearing one shoe or whatever because I was still traveling, selling wine. So it's like Richard and I are like walking around Manhattan. We got our roller wine bag. We're both like limping along, like selling Pinot Noir. It was just but it was so fun. It was so fun. And you know, he always had a great expense account. We would go to these great meals, and I mean, the best restaurants. And I was trying to think of like, well, where did and we sold wine in a lot of places, and I couldn't remember, it was too long ago to remember like where we had like some of the best like by the glass placements. But even if they didn't buy, we still went there. It was fun. And then, so I was saying how Matthew Green, it was his like fine wine group. He had this, I don't know what his actual title was. He was basically like his right-hand man, and his name was Richie Petrina. And Richie was young. He'd gone to Cornell, came out of the hospitality program there, and he was so smart, so smart. We became such good friends, and he would help me like run reports out of Diver, which was this horrible reporting system that most of the distributors had back then. And you know, if I wasn't with Richard, I was with Richie. I was always going out to dinners and doing all these fun things. And that was actually before my husband and I got together. But it was like, it became like we would be like, oh, my East Coast boyfriends, like Richard and Richie, like I'm always like spending time with them. And then my husband and I got together, we still call him that. And even like Richard Shipman, it could be like, my girlfriend, Cara? Like what? Like that one? So it was these great, relationships that people super smart helped me learn how distribution even works. And we had a lot of fun and sold a lot of wine and, along the way, and ate so much good food. That was so fun. And then it was another Charmer House down in Florida. And at the time it was called Premier Beverage. It's now called Breakthrough. And every year they had this road show that they did, and there were multiple Oregon wineries in the portfolio, but there were also other, like Chalk Hill and Grey Goose, and there was this cohort of us, and almost everyone's young, right? And I can't remember what order it started in, but it was something like, I think maybe we started in like Miramar, which is like Miami, South Florida. And you go over to Naples, you go up to Tampa, you go to Orlando, or anyway, one, and then the last stop was Key West. I only went to Key West once because it was like, are we really going to sell that much wine in Key West? But I did it enough years. I was like, I'm going, because everyone was telling me, and it was so fun. When you do this for a whole week, right? You're just every day. It's the same people. We're on the circuit together, and it was just this crazy, party down in Key West after we were all done. But we sold a lot of wine, and Florida, it still is, but it's like this extension of New York, and I'm from Oregon, right? I mean, actually my sorority big sister here is Jewish, but I didn't know what that really meant, right? And the distribution business is a lot of Jewish families, and I learned so much about Jewish culture. I remember there was one time though where I was in Florida. I don't remember who I was with, but somebody made some joke about like a bris, and I was like, I don't get it. Like, what does that mean? And if you don't know what a bris is, look it up, and you'll know more. But things like we have some of our really good friends now are Jewish, and they joke about it. They're like, you are like a New York Jew. Like, we can and then we joke, right? I'm super frugal, and we make fun of each other, and we have so much fun. But that culture, I never would have gotten that exposure to that culture and to really understand that. and appreciate it. But some of the people, this is a little shout out, right? And it's funny because I was like, I just went through my phone and I was like, Premier Beverage, and like 40 people's phone numbers are there. I mean, who knows if they still have their numbers still or whatever, but I was like, oh, I remember these people. I was like, Craig Cox, Jim Jones, Greg Leslie, Eric File, Jeff Popkins, Steve Chernoff, who was in a different market, who got sent down there, Scott Piles, Ed Solis. Our brand manager was Brad Kinder. I mean, as you can tell, there's a lot of men, right? Male-dominated industry. So I worked in construction, male-dominated, beverage industry, male-dominated, even on the wine side, it's male-dominated. So I've always worked in these kind of math department, right? And then another market I spent a lot of time in was in Pennsylvania. At the time, it was called Capital Wine and Spirits. I think it's branded as Breakthrough Beverage now. Great people. Tim Kilcullen, Ted Clare. There was a woman that was there, Christina Godfrey. She was only a little bit older than I was. And so, you kind of clung on to some of the women, and, she has grown in her career, kind of cheer for them. So that was kind of a cool thing. Not at Charmer House. I also spent a lot of time in Massachusetts and Horizon Beverage, which I think actually maybe Southern bought them. There's been so much consolidation, which is a crazy thing in the industry, which is one of the challenges, right, for Oregon wineries now, and not just Oregon wineries, like all beverage. But I, became pretty good friends with Ben Rubenstein, which was it's like two, I don't think that they were related, but two Jewish families and then their kids, right, the next generation. And so Ben was one of the sons. And, we became friends, and I remember, when I was in town once for like the Super Bowl. We didn't go to the Super Bowl, but we watched the Super Bowl together. And, they were all Pats fans. Of course, the Pats won. And we went up on the top of his building, and there was fireworks and, these really cool, fun memories. But then there's the business side, right? And so I remember that was one of those things where they exited us. They said, we have too many Oregon wines, and we have to focus, and we don't have a space for Willamette Valley Vineyards in our portfolio anymore. And that's when you remember, oh, this is business, and we're not just eating good food and drinking good wine. And so there were things like that where you learn, but it was a good learning experience, right? I mean, you build these relationships, but also at the same time, sometimes you have to have those hard conversations, and you have to do what's right for the business. Now, do I think that was the right thing to do? No, because I was on the bum side of it, but it was a good learning experience. There was this time when we did a partnership with McCormick and Schmidt, right? McCormick and Schmidt, I think it was before Landry's bought it. I think it was still independent, but based here in Oregon, right? So it was perfect story. We did 15 wine dinners of this exact same menu. I think maybe we did 20, and then I did 15 of them. They were really successful, right? And that was part of our approach, is that you're in the market. You're not just there for your distributors. You're not just there for buyers. You're there for consumers. You're building, you're creating that demand, right? That 3-tier system. You want to have that pull. I still don't like to go to McCormick and Schmick's. I will go, but I will never choose that as a place to go. I ate there so many times. And here's the kicker, though. I'm allergic to salmon. From Oregon, allergic to salmon, right? Sell Pinot Noir. Of course, the main course was salmon. But I didn't want to eat any of that food anyway, at that point anyway, so it didn't really matter. But, the irony of it. Oh, I didn't talk about Dawn Crank. So you've interviewed Dawn?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I haven't listened to that.
Oh, it's a good one.
Oh, I love Dawn. Dawn and I started at Willamette Valley Vineyards on the same day. Did he even mention me in his interview? Jeez, I'm gonna have to go back and harass him.
I could remember.
If not, he'll have to do an edit.
We'll do an addendum.
Dawn and I started on the exact same day at Willamette Valley Vineyards. We ended up actually getting married on the same day also. They got married 1 year later. both at the winery. They're not married still, but they're both very good friends of ours. And Don and I we're still really good friends. And we did again, I have so many tours. I would take people, whoever it was, consumers or distributors, right? I would send Don on the road. I would plan these trips and I'd be like, okay, here, you're working with this people, you're doing this wine dinner, you're doing all these things. And he would go out on the road and go sell wine and tell the story. We'd go through the cellar, we'd do a tour, and he'd get the wine thief out, and we'd taste wine, and that's when Forrest Klafke was there as the head winemaker. Forrest, total character. It's funny, you go to like Willamette Valley Vineyards, if you go to a restaurant, one of the restaurants, right, and they'll tell these stories about Forrest, and I'm like, most of that's loosely accurate. Like, it's just, there's this like these legends, and so you just kind of have to laugh a little bit. But it's, everyone talks about wine is so romantic, and people often ask, well, don't you want to start a winery? And I'm like, no, I know how hard it is. I know how much capital it takes. I don't like to be cold or wet, right? Before we started, you're like, do you want the fire on? I'm like, I want the fire on. I'm like, I don't want to make wine. I will talk about it all day long. I will go through the tour. I will, we'll barrel taste. I will do the things, but I've, for the record, never wanted to own a winery.
It shows you have a lot of common sense.
Exactly, I guess so. Let's see, other things I wanted to talk about my time at Willamette is, something that I'm proud of is I helped, found the sustainability committee at Willamette, and there was a group of us, right? I mean, there were, it was a whole, team of employees, and but I felt like it was one of those things where we started to kind of walk the talk a little bit more. And so things that we actually did is, when I was there, we bought the first solar panels. So I helped to do that. It's amazing what you can learn when you're thrown into something, to research it. It was kind of the beginnings of like some of the cork stuff. And obviously that got way bigger, and I didn't do most of that, but that was kind of some of the beginnings there. Also, we rolled out, again, another kind of partnership was with Sequential Biofuels. And that was a cool employee perk for a while. I bought a diesel car and we got fuel, and I was commuting down, right? So my husband was working in Portland. I was working at the winery. We lived in Tualatin, then we lived in Wilsonville. And so it was like that long commute, and that was cool though, to get like free fuel. And so there was this, I was like, what are the things that are kind of fun? There was this picture of me like in front of my, diesel VW with the tank of gas. It was like this, iconic picture that was used a lot for a while at the winery. I'm like, I should get a copy of that. It's kind of fun. So that was a cool one. And we started like recycling foils, and people could bring their bottles back. I mean, there's cool stuff now, right, with Ravino. And so that's like way better, because now those bottles are actually getting refilled. Although it's just the beginning of that, but that's a really cool thing that's going on there now. When I was there was when Bacchus Fine Wines, like the distribution channel, was going on. And so we were the distributor for Riedel glassware. I have so much Riedel, it's amazing. I did a lot of those trainings. Have you ever done one of those trainings where you go through and you taste through? Come to my house, we'll do it at my house sometime. I've done it multiple times. I did it all the time, like back then, but like older now, I've done it at least twice for like friends, right? Like brought people over and like I'd print out the mat and you have all the different wine glasses. And so basically the concept is you taste the same wine from a whole bunch of different glasses. And I can say I am more of a wine glass snob than a wine snob. And we kind of joke about that. Like I'm sometimes like I'll bring my own glasses with me, which there's really cool. The little O's, they have like a little like a container that they come in, and you can just. Anyway. I always be prepared. And my husband he's like, you need to get rid of. This is ridiculous. I'm like, no, eventually they'll break, and we won't have as many. I mean, I'm never gonna have like the good hookup like I did back then. But that was also when we went through and they created the Oregon Pinot Noir glass, which I think we now call the New World Pinot Noir glass because California folks got upset. And I forgot to look because I can't remember. I should know these things, but again, in my office, I have like a couple different bottles of wine to like kind of remind me of where I came from, right? One of them is a bottle of Dundee Springs, right? So first winery I worked at. One is the first bottle of white Burgundy that I ever had, which was like life. I'm like, wow, this is Chardonnay? Like, are you kidding me? And then one, I can't remember what winery it is right now. I should have looked. It's California Pinot, and it was a buyer. I feel like it was maybe like a retailer in New Jersey. And I grew up here, and I'm like, Oregon Pinot Noir is the best. Cool. We need the cool climate. California Pinot Noir is jammy and it's not good. And he's like, take this and drink it. And it was really good. And so it was one of those things where I was reminded that my palate there's so much wine out there, and I need to not be so maybe cocky, and that I don't know everything. So that was a good lesson that I learned. And then the other bottle that's in my office is a bottle of Hendrick's gin, which goes back to my friend Richard Shipman I was talking about. Our oldest, don't repeat this. I know we're recording it, but our oldest son's name is Hendricks. We changed the spelling to protect the innocent. But he is named after gin. A lot of people, when you're coming up with names, we have a really boring last name, Day, right? And so we needed interesting first names. And people were throwing out things that were related about wine, and then anyway, that one stuck. I once was, I don't know if you guys know really what it means to go and sell wine on the road. You show up, or you meet somewhere or whatever. You spend the whole day with a person in their car, and they drive you around, right? And so obviously you're selling wine and you're talking about wine, but you're hanging out with a person for a whole, someone that's introverted could not do that job, because you're getting in a stranger's car. Granted, when you do it, you get to know people and you build these relationships, but the first time, and this is all the time, you're getting in you're just assigned someone. You get in their car and you spend the whole day with them. So you meet these really interesting people. And I don't remember, it wasn't a distributor rep. I can't remember what the context was, but there was this guy who was a little bit older, and he said to me one time, he goes, he was talking about the wine business, and again, I think it was a little more reference toward the wine distribution business. He was like, yeah, it's just full of a bunch of C students, right? It's not a hard business. And I just remember being like, okay, I can see that. I go, that's probably why I rose so quickly at such a young age, right? Because I was a great student. But I did, right? I was already the national sales manager in my 20s, and I was like, okay, I can see that. Well, worked out okay for me. But just the things that people tell you. I think we should go back to my time at Linfield, if that's okay.
Sure. Let's talk about Linfield. What year did you get to Linfield?
In 96, and I graduated in 2000. I really enjoyed my time here. You can tell I'm real quiet, I I mean, I knew so many people. You get to know the people that are here, you get to know the staff, you get to know the professors. I loved that. My graduating class here was smaller than my graduating class at Wesleyan. Was close enough to family, yet far enough away. I lived in Jane Failing my freshman year. Is it still all girls?
No, it's the pet dorm now.
Oh, it's the pet dorm now. Yeah, it was all girls then, which was super fun. I mean, there's definitely people that I've lost touch with that, hopefully someday that rekindles. But some of my favorite people that are from here. I have a lot of friends that are educators. And I mean, even like we have, friends that, like our kids, played t-ball together, like that are like our neighbors basically. And so it's a small place where you make those connections. Again, people are important to me. And it was really, I enjoyed my time here. I never knew what I was gonna do. I was always gonna minor in math and then find a major, figure out what I wanna do. I got a degree in math, mostly because it was easy for me. There's a lot of super smart math people in my family. I'm one of the lesser talented math people in my family, but it worked for me. And I took a ton of business classes though. I was one class short of a business minor. And those were really helpful. So I love hearing how there's a lot of business classes incorporated to the wine program now. I think it's really important. I think for anyone, no matter what you do, it's a business, right? You want to be a professor, guess what? The university's still a business. You want to do hair, still a business. You want to, be a YouTuber, still a business. And I think that, the education system fails us a little bit in not teaching us. I know there's like a trend to do a little bit better with that, but I think that all college students should take some business classes. Especially liberal arts, you get to choose and you get to take a bunch of different things, but I would say prioritize that. I think it's important. And I wish I could go back and remember all of the professors' names, but they were so good. The business professors were so good. And I saw I should have wrote that down. I didn't write everything down, but it was Professor Chambers. That he has come back and done some Jan term classes. I never went on that. I had friends that went on that New York trip, but I saw that he's done that recently. That's really
this January went to
so cool. Other professors, I think that Stephen Britcher is still here, right?
I think so.
And I took a lot of math classes from him. I think he actually went to Linfield also, and he was young back then. He still looks the same, I think. I saw a picture of him when I was kind of snooping around. He has so much energy, and he would get animated and be at the board and teaching math, and it was fun. His classes were fun. Another professor I took a lot of classes from was Jack Allen, who has passed away. I found out when I was looking it up. And there was one semester that I only had 3 classes, and 2 of them were with him. I was taking 2 math classes, 2 5-credit math classes at the same time, and it was so easy. It was awesome. And people are like, math is so hard, and it came easy for me. And it's funny because you look back and a lot of the people that were in my math classes with me, some actually, left and went and did some engineering at Oregon State. There was a kind of a program back then, like a 2-3 or a 3-2 or something like that. And then most of the other people were taking computer science classes. maybe I should have took one of those. That was not interesting to me back then. Little did I know I would go into technology. And then the other folks were education. Audrey Lepper took a lot of math classes with me, but she was pursuing education. She's now a assistant superintendent. Anyway, she's a very big job. And then the last professor that I had was Roger Dell, and he was so smart, but his teaching style did not work for me. And I was like one of those regrets. I wish, like I was like jealous when I found out that Professor Britcher was teaching differential equations. I was like, he would have been so good at that. That was like the hardest math class I took, differential equations, diffie-Q. And it never really clicked. Like I got a B or something, but I never really like understood it. And our oldest son, the one that was hard, he's neurodivergent and his brain works differently than other people's. Super smart, and like he's was on the math team, and he's a freshman this year in high school, and he's taking an AP, which is a college level course as a freshman. He and his two best buddies are in it. And he'll be like, Mom, what was the hardest math class you ever took? And I'd be like, diffie-Q. And he's like, what was it about? I'm like, I have no idea. No idea. And other times he'll be like, can you help me with this? And I'm like, maybe. I'm like, math is like a language, like use it or lose it. And so sometimes I'm helpful, most of the time I'm not. But it definitely like street cred. Oh yeah. Like if I would have everyone had business degrees, that was actually more helpful. But I got street cred from my math degree here. And then, oh yes, so when I was here was when Dr. Bowl was president. We lovingly, not to her face, but lovingly called her Viv. And she was awesome. And we didn't realize it, I think, back then, but I think that was, you learn by role models, right? And I think that was the first time where it was really, I was in a situation where there was a woman that was the leader, the top leader. And especially back then, that was a big deal. But I didn't really know that. Like, you don't realize it until maybe you get in your career, especially in all these male-dominated areas. And so looking back, that was something that was special and important. Oh, I wrote down this note. My husband, in our 20s, like we hung out with a lot of Linfield people. And my husband would joke and be like, he finished his degree, he went to Portland State. He'd be like, yeah, nursing campus, class of 2005. Like, as in like, because we never knew the people at the nursing campus, right? And like everybody else, I mean, there were a couple other people that weren't from Linfield, but like it would be like the joke of like, everyone was from Linfield. And anyway, it was like this ongoing joke that we had. Other things that I did, I was Phi Sigma Sigma. I was in sorority, and I still, not a ton, but there's quite a few people that I'm still in contact. A lot of them are sorority sisters. I liked how there weren't houses, like you don't live in, which was nice, but you still had made some of those connections, and that was also, philanthropy is important, and I learned that, I think, through the sorority. I actually, just this week, Nicole Thomas when I was a freshman, she was the president. She was a senior, and she is a social worker of some sort. I don't know exactly what her title is, but anyway, we're on social media connected or whatever, and I had something I wanted to donate, but it was kind of nice, and so I didn't want to donate it, like just to give it to Goodwill or whatever. And it just came up, this request. I was like, perfect. It was like for one of her clients. It was, someone that was starting out with a new apartment and had nothing, and so we actually met up in this last week, and it was so fun to see her in person, and and you just kind of pick up, I haven't seen her for a really long time. I think maybe I've seen her like once at like a homecoming game or something. And so it was kind of like, it was nice. A lot of those connections here, you can do that just because you knew them so well and you spent so much time together. And I did some intramural sports, which are super fun. Oh, I studied abroad. And so my junior year, I spent a semester in England at Nottingham Trent. And I lived in a house. I was like the third or fourth like group from Linfield that lived in this house. And it was funny, the host mom, I think it was Jancis or Janice. Anyway, I like show up. She's like, "So, do you like, boneless, skinless chicken breasts like the other ones?" It was very like American, like college girls trying to like be healthy or something. But that was a lot of fun. I drank a lot of cider in England. We drank a little bit of wine. We traveled a lot, which was amazing. That was kind of the first time I really had traveled. And that was actually probably where I gained some confidence in the traveling, right, to sell wine, was probably from some of those experiences because, we just went and we figured it out. We made a plan. We stayed in hostels and you had to figure out where to eat. You had to figure out where to stay, what to see, what to do. And traveling, I think, is really good for everyone. And that was a really awesome time. At the end of our semester there, one of my friends, she and our moms came over, and the four of us traveled together. We went to multiple cities. That's actually one of the friends that I've kind of lost touch with. But this upcoming December, one of my best friends, she is turning 50, and her mom, that's like her gift from her parents is she and her mom are going on this Christmas river cruise, this European Christmas river cruise. And I was like, well, I think that my mom and I should come also. And so we're going this December with us and our moms. And one of the cities that my mom and I went to when we were studying abroad was Vienna. We'll get to go to Vienna again together. And so it's like reminiscing some of those times when we traveled then. So it's kind of like rekindling some of that now, which will be fun. But again, I just think travel is really important. Linfield, I'm super excited about Maria Ponzi. I was excited when she came in as the interim, just because she really understands Oregon. And I was excited when that became a permanent position.
How connected do you stay to Linfield?
Not super connected. I was, there have been some things through the years that, I've come to some of the speakers and I've come to some of the things, and there were some like meetings early on when they were trying to figure out what direction the program should go into. I don't think my input aligned with the direction. One of the things that I said was, I don't think we should just focus on wine. And that's something, and we'll talk more about that, but in my career, I've learned a lot more about the spirits industry, beer, non-alcoholic, and that's really what we're seeing right now, right, in the industry, is that, there's still a lot of wine that's sold, but it's crowded. There's a lot of wineries, and there's a lot of competition. There's just new segments now, and it's important to learn about them and understand them, and you're not in a bubble, right? Again, it kind of goes back to what I was talking about, where we were building the Oregon wine brand, but then you're also competition. Like, you're not just competing against wine. You're not just competing against California Pinot Noir or Burgundy. It's beverages. And now there's this new term, zebra striping, right? Where you drink one non-alcoholic, one alcoholic, one non-alcoholic, one alcoholic drink. It's like a thing, they have a name for it. Like in the evening, you zebra stripe. And so there's a lot to learn about. And so I I pay attention to things and like, there's people that have been here forever, right? Like Debbie.
Harmon Ferry.
Yep, exactly. Thank you. What's Jeff's last name?
Jeff McKay.
Yes, been here forever. There's people where you see them. It's been super fun, like watching like Gary Kilgore grow here. He's so awesome, by the way. Super cool that Scott Brocious came back, and all these fun things. I mean, I pay attention enough, but I'm not like. There's always things where I'm like, oh, I should come out for that. Like, I think there's Cho is coming, which is super fun wine brand right now, and I'm like, oh, I should come, and I'm like, oh, there's a conflict, and it's a little too far away, and life gets in the way. These kids are busy and all the things.
So tell us about after Willamette Valley Vineyards, how your career, what you did next.
So I realized we wanted to start a family eventually. And you can't do that when you're on the road 20 weeks a year. And so I had to kind of reinvent myself. And I started to consult. I can't remember when. It was one of the things I noted. But I joined a tasting group, the Oregon Wine Group, I think we called ourselves. It's still together today. It's the same. I mean, like the core people are still tasting. I mean, this is a really long time it's been together, but you've interviewed some of the people, Mia and Jeff Waller, Lee Brown, Claudia Bauer, Leah Jorgensen, Max Borgerding, I don't know if that's how you pronounce her last name. She was a chef and she was a teacher at the Portland Culinary Institute. I think she now does wine tour. One of the things she does, she's retired, but does like wine tours in Portugal. And Jeff Matthews, who's like a big direct-to-consumer guy. Carl Giovanni, who's consulted for a long time, does a lot of marketing stuff now. That was like this core group of like folks that got together and tasted a lot. And it was good networking and hearing about what other people are doing. And so I started to consult. And more people that you've interviewed worked with John and Kathy Zivo Wines for a long time. I worked with them for years. And it's actually really funny because I didn't actually do that much for them. I did in the beginning, right? Like I helped get them in the right direction and talk about, pricing and strategy and all these things. But long term, what my role became is, John was a surgeon, right? He had a full-time job. He needed focus. And so I would be like, okay, John, these are the things you need to do. Or what have you done on the last things we talked about? And so it just became, because Kathy didn't want to do that. And Kathy didn't know even, right, of like, what are the things he should be doing? And that was a lot of what I helped them with, long term. And they're very good friends too. I adore them. They're really great people. And that was one of the things when I was looking for something else, and I listened to Miguel
Lopez.
Thank you. Interview, and so this was, let's see, what even year is this? February 2011. And right, it was a really big deal. Zivo's super small. It was super small. It's gone now. But and it even says in here, right? The wines are made at Wineworks in McMinnville under the watchful eye of Miguel Lopez, the winemaker there. And it has like a little picture of John, and I just thought it was really cool that it had Miguel's, and I'm leaving it with you guys. Like, one of those things where you're just like held on to it. It's a big deal. It was like there were things that Willamette was in, but that was like the first time where it was something like I was like helping and got into the Spectator. It was a big deal. And so I did a lot of stuff with Zivo. I forgot I was listening to another one, and I did a little bit with Belvalet and Joe Wright down there, and the owners there. I'd forgotten I'd done some stuff with them, and I don't know. I can't remember exactly all the order of everything. I worked with. That must have been after. So while I was still trying to like build this consulting business, I then took a job at Hawksview, and it was the very beginning of Hawksview. And Ryan Harms was the winemaker, and he was brilliant, right? He was like at Hawksview, making the wine. He was, it was Jack and AJ Kemp, and AJ was the son. It was AJ, Ryan, and myself. And Ryan, that's when he was building Union Wine Company. And even though he was at Hawksview, like he was basically like doing union stuff, and it was smart, right? It takes a lot of capital to build a company. And I was trying to do the same thing. I eventually realized the thing about consulting that I didn't like is you spend like half of your time trying to figure out which next project is, and you don't get paid for that. And it's kind of draining a little bit. And so I think maybe after that, I ended up leaving Hawksview. It wasn't the right fit necessarily. Like it was fine for a little while, and then there were other flashier people that that Jack, the owner, was attracted to and wanted to hire, and there just wasn't room for both of us to do that. And I wanted to kind of move on anyway. And then I worked at Vondegaard, which was this little wine distributor, for a little bit. And again, I'm trying to like figure out what do I do and be able to start a family. And I had our first child, Hendrix, and I was this little distributor rep. And one of my territories was in Eugene, and I would drive down to Eugene with my kid sleeping in the car seat. I'd strap him onto my chest. I'd walk in, I'd pour the wines, taste the wines. It was fine for a little while. One day, I don't think it's there anymore. I think it was called Sundance. This really excellent wine shop in Eugene. And, I got the baby and all the things, and I drop my keys in the seat, and I buckle my kid in, and I close the door, and I hear the click, and I'm like, ah! I locked him in the car. I go, and my phone. Oh, that was what happened, is I had my phone and my keys, and I drop it, and I think my phone dropped on the button, but the button back then or whatever, like it didn't lock until you actually close the door or whatever. And I go back in, and I'm like, hi guys. Boris was one of the main guys. I locked the baby in the car. Boris was like, I have a Volkswagen also, let's try if my keys work, Anyway, we end up calling the fire department, and they came, and they get there, and they're like, ma'am, just so you know, if this goes on for too long, we're gonna have to break the window. And I'm like, please don't break my window. I have to drive all the way up the freeway with a kid in the back and no window. And anyway, they worked their magic. They put their little blood pressure cuff in there, and and we were able to unlock it. Anyway, but I think that was like, it worked out. He literally was sleeping. Like, he didn't know. He was, I don't even know, 3 months old or something.
He knows now.
I know. But you this isn't gonna work long term. And so I had to kind of continue to figure out what I was gonna do. And, I'd left Willamette on we'll call it interesting terms. It took me a few years to build that relationship back up with Jim. I didn't enjoy how the separation went. But it was actually just another life lesson. I was trying to network and figure out what my next move was going to be. And I was actually here at Linfield. And it was some of the planning. They had invited a bunch of us in the wine industry to come. And I was like, I need to make a move. I don't know if you guys keep your ears open. One of those people went to my boss and said, well, she's going to leave. I think I should take her job. And they ended up hiring that person. And I was like, well, I'm not going to make this easy. And so that person, they got to put another desk in my office. We shared an office with desks for a while, and I wasn't like, I'm out. I waited until I figured, something out a little bit. Anyway, the funny part, karma, right, is that person ended up not being a good fit and did not last long at all. And, Jim's serial entrepreneur, right? And a lot of people can't work in that environment, and just personalities and things. But the funny part is they had no national sales manager, and when I was consulting, I went back and did some consulting. Didn't have to travel, right? Because I wasn't doing that anymore. They were evaluating software. Wait, I want to come back to that because I just realized I didn't talk about this. While I was trying to consult, there was this group of women, and we started this, just a referral network called Canopy Wine Marketing Network. And I know that this was like super ragged, I just found this one. Here, tell me if you can. And it was Claudia Bowers, Leah Jorgensen, Carrie Higgins. Carrie's like a label, she's press printing. Dixie Huey, like PR miracle worker. Amy Hall, which was like a designer and websites. Sheila Nicholas. Andrea Johnson, photographer. And we had a website, we had all this collateral, we had all this, how are we gonna help you? And there was some crossover in between some of us, and not that much. And we got a booth. This was back when the Oregon Wine Symposium was down in Eugene. And it was really cool. It was like a destination, and everyone goes, and it was really, I think people in the wine industry became closer because you go for this event, and they had this big dinner, and we did all of these things, and that was kind of the early on when I was really trying to build this consulting business. But I found this, and I was like, all of these are still relevant. So here's my national sales checklist. Does your pricing reflect the positioning you are striving for? Are you viewed as easy to work with by your distributor partners? Does your 5-year production plan align with your current sales trends and efforts? Have you identified your brand champions in each market? Are you regularly communicating with your brand champions? I was like, all of this is still relevant today, by the way. I'm like, I should share this. But here's the thing that happened. There's this company in California called Canopy, and we got a cease and desist letter, and all of us were like, we're not even a real company. We're just this referral network. And we're like, all right, we're out. Because that was a real company. And so that was also one of those things we were like, okay, this whole consulting thing, we're in a little bit over our head. I want to be part of a company again, I think. But it was again, a lot of learnings though. It was good stuff. And so I was consulting. I came back to consult at Willamette Valley Vineyards, and they were evaluating software. And it was this product called Grapevines. And it's a custom version of Salesforce.com for beverage.com. So CRM, customer relationship management. So many acronyms. And Willamette that's a big piece of the Willamette Valley Vineyard strategy, right? Is know your customers and stay in contact with them, and have that pull from your customers. So it made sense for them to look at a CRM system. And one of the co-founders, Jim Thompson, at the time, he and his wife Megan spent half of the year in Portland and half of the year in Florida. They grew up in Florida, and they were getting ready to go spend some time in Florida. And Jim's like, well, Jim Thompson was like, let's get coffee. And I was kind of like, okay, but I was like, in my mind, I'm thinking, we already said we're going to sign the contract. We're going to buy Grapevines. The deal's done. So I show up to coffee with my 6-month-old Hendrix, right, in the baby carrier. Thankfully, he's sleeping. And I basically show up to an interview. And so I was talking about how I've like been collected, right? He like collected me. He's like, we are growing and we need a salesperson and someone that understands the industry and can talk about it. And we think that you would be a good fit. And I'm like, what? Software? Wait, I'm like, can you explain it to me a little bit more? You know? And so I went and worked at Grapevines. And I was there for 10 years. 10 years. Oh, by the way, I worked at Willamette for 6 years, which is like a really long time. I mean, there are some people like Forrest and Don Crank, like that have worked there longer. I mean, there are people that have worked there longer, but a lot of people have gone through Willamette and learned a lot, and then just a couple years and get out. And so I was like, I thought that was a big deal that I was there for 6 years, and then I went and worked at the company for 10 years. But I learned about technology, right? And in general, right? A lot of this is generalizations. Wineries identify as farmers, slow adopters, right? There's not a lot of drive, especially back then, to adopt technology. And so that was really when I learned a lot more about the spirits business and the beer business and just the business in general. I mean, wine, obviously I came from wine. I still love wine. But it's a really capital intensive business. There's not a lot of margin. There's not a lot of a desire or budget for software. And so I learned, I worked with a lot more spirit companies, and like big ones, right? Like William Grant & Sons, Campari, Proximo, and I mean, spirits, you just make more, right? Like wine doesn't work that way. You have to really plan ahead. You're really limited by the vintage. You're limited by what you have. It's very different business-wise, but they also operate more like a business. And so I continued to learn more. And really actually the consulting piece helped inform the rest of my career, right? Because I've been in technology for 13 years now, I think almost 14 maybe. And I am like a consultant, right? I listen, I ask questions. What's your pain? What are we gonna fix? And this is how we can fix it. Or this is what you should do, this is what you shouldn't do. And it's a relationship, you build that trust, you listen to what they're saying, and how you can help them be more successful. Which are all of those things that you do as a consultant, but then you get paid for it all the time. You don't have to you have to do that half of the time work where you don't get paid for anything. Plus you have health insurance and all these little things like that. And so Grapevines had, they were really, really great people that I worked with there. So they had two co-founders, Jim Thompson that I'd mentioned, and then Tim Jones. And really, Jim was like a technologist. Again, one of those like super smart, brain moves really fast. And then Tim was, came out of the industry, and he had worked at Shefflin and Somerset, and worked at Moet Hennessy, and a Kasasha brand that I can't remember the name of, and then was living they still live in Southern California, and it was the two of them. They were very smart, right? They realized we have our strengths, but they hired a CEO, right? That was not their strength. And so John Collins they hired him as the CEO, and there was a couple of employees, but I was, an earlier employee. The company was quite small still, and I'd always worked in small business, and so that was great for me. And I learned that who you work with is really important, who you work for is really important. And there was a joke, right? Like I manage up. And I, it's been probably 5 years ago, I worked with a life coach. I wanted to figure out like what direction I want to go in my career, what do I want to do, and you think about who are the people that helped inform your career and your person and all the things. And one of the things that I have done is this was also actually some of this information. It was from our life coach, but also from a speaker at one of the Women in Wine events, which I've been to all of those. They're really great in Oregon. And she was basically saying, like, have your personal board of directors, right? Like, who are your people? And so, one of them is John Collins, who's my CEO for 10 years. And so I wanted to tell him that, like, hey, I consider you, right? I come to you, I know what I can ask, I know, like, you're a mentor to me. And, it was like one of the biggest compliments to ever get is he said, well, you made me do a better job. Like he's like, I feel the exact same way. You made me better at my job. So it was really cool to have that like reciprocal relationship. And they live in St. Helena, and I like to stay at people's houses. We go down to Napa, I'll stay there. I stayed there not that long ago, earlier this year. And, just like, again, it goes back to the people. And he came out of the wine industry, and a lot of that team actually at Grapevines, because John worked at Treasury and a couple other places, but there was like a core group of people that came from Treasury. And then investors came in, and again, working for great people, they wanted us to succeed also. And so I had ownership in Grapevines, and I think almost everybody did, anyone that had been there a significant amount of time. And then we had investors come in, and the founders, it was kind of the piece where at least, especially one of the co-founders, wanted to be done. It was stressful, and he was ready for the next stage in his life. And I was promoted to the executive team, and it was really stressful and crazy. And our largest customer basically said, we're trying to make a plan to not use your system anymore. And of course that was like, my compensation is connected to that, and like all these things. And I said, how like this, CEO came in, a woman, which is, I love that. But I was like, how long, because basically the plan was like, they started with Grapevines, and then they were going to buy some other companies, and you put them together and you get the technologies to work together. And like, it's this recipe, right? It's what these investment companies do. And I was like, how long is it usually like this stressful? And she's like, like 10 years. And I was like, oh gosh, I don't know if I can do this level of stress for 10 years. And so I was like, I need to do something different. And that's when I left. So what I've been doing the last 3 years is I went into the world of ERP, enterprise resource planning, and similar to Grapevines. So it was a custom version of NetSuite for beverage alcohol called Crafted ERP. And NetSuite and Salesforce were the first true cloud computing companies. They literally built their systems in the cloud. A lot of other softwares, like Microsoft, things like they have had to adapt, right? They've had to change, and so that multi-tenant structure, a lot of it was an easy transition for me. I mean, ERP, I had to learn a lot. Like there was a lot to learn about that, but part of it was not that bad of a transition because I understood the relationship. I understood how these things work. It's SaaS, software as a service, and contract negotiation. Like, I mean, the stuff that I understood, right? It was good. It was fun. I'd actually met a couple of the co-founders before when they were doing research. We all had gone to a competitor's seminar, like a event they were having. They didn't like pay attention to who was coming to their event. And I mean, literally, they were like, it was their direct competition. They were like doing research of like, should we move into this market and do this? And Grapevines was more of there was just some overlap, but they were a competitor. And the conference was actually here in Portland. This was a long time ago, but that's how we met, and so we stayed in contact. I went to them and I was like, hey, I think it's time. I think we should work together. And there were lots of changes, and as you mentioned, I'm in between things right now. I gave my notice. The industry is not focused on what you're producing, right? And that's what ERP is that accounting and finance foundation, and then it's really production, compliance, inventory, cost of goods, like all important things. But right now, people aren't focused on making things. People have enough product, right? And they need to focus on selling things. And so it just seemed like it's the right time to go back to putting my efforts into helping people sell things. And so I'm actually going back to Andavi. So Andavi is who, came in and invested in Grapevines. It is a totally different company now. They've added multiple other offerings, some really cool stuff. And so there's still Grapevines, right? Which is like that CRM piece and survey tool. And, but there's, trade promotion management. There's, pricing, really tracking your pricing. There's a tool called Tradeparency, where you're tracking your depletion allowances. DAs, you got more acronyms. And so, really it's there's this thing that happens, right? So there's SPAs and there's DAs. SPAs is special purchase allowance. It's when you say, I'm selling you this case of Pinot Noir, and you get immediately $20 off or whatever it is, right? And then the DA is when I say, okay, after you sell that case of Pinot Noir, then I'll give you $20. And a lot of times it's like how you do like by the glass placements, right? Like, okay, we want to focus this wine just on this channel, and only if you sell it to a restaurant do you get this, DA. And I mean, I remember sitting in the accounting office at Willamette, and you go through the invoices and you're like, looks good to me, pay the bill. You're signing off on it, and you're like, I bet we sold that many cases. Yeah. And so, there's technology now. I mean, that's really what technology is for, is to help you be better informed and to make better business decisions, right? Not having siloed data. People love spreadsheets. I love spreadsheets. Spreadsheets are not a tool. I mean, like, they're not like a solution, right? They're not like they're error prone. And the worst part, right, is that a lot of times you don't realize that there's errors until a very long time down the road. And then it's hard to find it and hard to fix it. And how many decisions have you made on bad data? And so, that's where, the things about technology, information, better decision-making, automation, right? Everyone wants less manual work. And you can do that. There's so much great technology these days. And then, get rid of the duplicate entry, because most folks, most wineries, beverage companies have like 7 to 10 different solutions, like software solutions, including lots of spreadsheets that they utilize. And so when you have that, you have duplicate entry. Again, error prone, waste of time. And so that's a lot of what helping folks target with technology is around, those pieces. And then the cool thing I'm really excited about that I'm going to really focus on when I start is this data sharing. And they work with a couple different distributors, but one of the largest distributors. And we've been helping them share data directly with one of their largest spirit suppliers for years. And now they're that distribute. It's RNDC. RNDC has agreed to do that with other like suppliers of all sizes, which is a really big deal because distributors don't share information usually. And actually, I listened to Edwin Martinez's, and Edwin and I worked at Willamette together, and that was one of the things he was talking about with Mitchell is, we're different. We share information. And which is totally like his personality. I'm like, yeah, that doesn't surprise me that is his approach. He's great. He's fun, by the way. And so that's a big deal. I'm excited about that. And it'll be like accessible. So there's different offerings that, obviously a big spirit company and like a small winery, can't pay the same amount and wouldn't have the same access. But anyway, that's kind of something that's going on with that. That's exciting. And I also think, I didn't want to do it because of the stress, but I have grown in a different way in the last few years. I think it's good. I was in leadership roles, and then it was good to not be in a leadership role, and then to go back to it. Like I think it's a different approach, right? You think of things in a different way. You think of how people were managing you, and learn a lot about what not to do. And there's also that big customer that they were going to lose. They never went away, and it's actually RNDC, and like they've moved forward, and like now RNDC wants to do more. So that stress is not there, which is good. And I've like networked with so many other people on the ERP side. And so it'll be interesting to see that direction. I still think, right, some of the things about don't just think about wine, like what are other, look at Gallo bought a brewery, Montucky, which is, again, it's a marketing company, really. They don't make their own beer. Gallo's making tons of RTDs. And you look at the top fastest growing wine brands, one of them at the last however many years is BuzzBalls, which they were a customer actually, with the ERP company. They're a smart company. Obviously different demographic than what is going to consume, Oregon Pinot Noir. But they, based on the laws in each state, is what their recipe is based off of. So in Oregon, you can't sell spirits in a C-store, in a convenience store, right? So in Oregon, everything's wine-based, right? So not only are they one of the fastest growing wine brands, it's just because they pay, it's the TTB taxes, right? They pay in the wine category. But they don't only do that, right? I think they even use malt liquor in some states, but they use spirits in a lot of states. And it's all about paying the least amount of taxes, the cheapest way to make the product for that state. The consumer doesn't know. That's a very immature consumer. Well, this one, it tastes like, has notes as from wine, and this is from, but they're smart. That's smart, right? And they have now been acquired. They were sold. But those are some of the things, right, when you look at the scan data and the numbers, a lot of those big wine brands aren't real wine brands. What we consider, right, real wine. They pay their taxes in the wine category. The money goes back in that pot. But that's, just not that I think that this, Oregon winery should be making BuzzBalls or anything like that. But we have to pay attention to what's happening in the industry. And I think the other piece also is a lot of people in the spirits business come from CPG and consumer product goods, and they're like they're like, they use technology, they're dialed in. They're like pharma, right? Big pharma uses so much technology. And CPG, pharma, like they're all about automation, they're all about data. And so there's more of that on the spirit side. And there are definitely more now, right? I mean, what did I say, 13 years later, more people that are embracing technology and recognizing that it's a necessity. We're having a lot of trouble finding staff, keeping people. And so if you can automate, you should. I mean, we're seeing it in the vineyards, right? And so it's not just there, right? I mean, it's in any part of your business if you can automate. And then most people want to run lean teams, right? And when you have technology in place, you can run a lean team and you can scale up or down and utilizing technology.
You mentioned consolidation earlier. Obviously, it's been a big topic in what we've been covering. A lot of people talking about when they got into Oregon wine. At a certain time, there were this many wineries and this many distributors, and now it's flipped. So, in your time seeing distribution, tell me about how that has affected things on a big scale, and especially how it's affected Oregon wine.
It's a big deal. It is making everything a lot more challenging, and it's not. I mean, what I thought would happen for a little while, I thought like the Mitchells of the world would pop up, and there are still some, but I don't think anybody ever thought that there was going to be so much consolidation where it's really like two distributors, right? Southern Glazers and RNDC, and like, I mean, Breakthrough's there too, but they're not in every market. But it's, I mean, from my like CRM days, right? What we talk a lot about is like 20-80 rule, right? You're going to get 80% of your business from 20% of your accounts. You need to know who those people are. It used to be you could really rely more on your distributor, right? Like, hey, let's go find those, and then I'm going to pour them, and we'll get the placement, and then you'll make sure we keep the placement. Well, brands have to take responsibility of that and own those relationships. So you need to know who's your 20, right? And you need to know who your key accounts are. You need to know who the buyers are, and you have to foster those relationships ongoing because it's so competitive. And so it's not just the consolidation of the distributors, but I mean, one of the pieces that's so hard is that the books are so big, right? And so it goes back to that, you're competing within your own portfolio. And again, now those books are there's all these other Oregon wineries. There's so many. It's very rare, right, that you have like, oh, I'm the only this producer in a book. And so you're not just competing against the other distributor, you're competing against that portfolio, you're within the portfolio. I think something we haven't talked about also is there's been a huge shift in Oregon. It's a really big deal with a lot of these national and global companies coming in and buying properties. It elevates the game. They utilize technology. They are better about information and their systems, and they have multiple operations where their things are more centralized. They have more buying power, right? Think about a big company that buys glass, right? They can get better prices. They can be more competitive. And that is a really big change. On the flip side, it gives, not that Oregon needed more validation, but it does give that validation of like all of these. It was a big deal when DDO came. That was a long time ago though. And there wasn't anybody else for a while. And now there's a lot more companies realize it is, you need to have that as part of your portfolio. And so I think that's a really big shift from the distribution side, and then also like that Oregon wine perspective.
How did the pandemic affect you and affect the business in general?
So working in technology, I've worked from home. So that was still great. Having kids home while you're working from home is not super awesome. We have 2 boys. Our youngest was a kindergartner when the world shut down. And so we sent him to Catholic school. And so we had a good Catholic in the family for a little while, we joked. But it was this great, it was a loophole because it was a Catholic preschool that had kindergarten, and they added first grade because there was a need for it. And there were, and so they were the oldest kids in the school, right? And they kept going up. Actually, I think now the school might go through 8th grade now, maybe, or they're trying to go through 8th grade. And so we did that for a couple of years. So he went there through 3rd grade. And, we're big fans of small schools. And, there's lots of issues with the Catholic Church. They do drink a lot of wine, though, which is good. Those were really actually, they had an art show every year. And, at a Catholic school, you drink wine at events. It's great. It's some good wine. They're big supporters of the industry. And then our older son was going to a charter school, and they were, not like the Catholics, much more conservative. So they split the school in half basically, and they went every other day. So you only had exposure to half of the people. But then that school is 4th through 8th grade, and so that's when it was, you don't have to, if your child is there, you don't have to do the lottery. And so we brought we have interesting names for our kids. Our younger son is Orion, like Orion's belt, and so he started there at 4th grade, so he's a 5th grader now, and we love that school. So it's called 3 Rivers Charter School, and it's been a really good fit for our family, but just juggling all the things. The industry, again, it was okay for technology, right? People realize, one, around like staffing, utilizing technology, having things in the cloud, being able to work from anywhere, having information accessible is important. People kind of realize that more now. Everyone who bought a lot of product, everyone was drinking. I know we drank a lot during the pandemic. And, that kind of backfired a little bit because everyone loaded their cellars in poor restaurants, right? You go to great restaurants now and the wine lists aren't what they used to be. They don't carry the inventory. And so I do hope that, some of those things continue to come back. But, people aren't drinking. We have to still figure this out, right? We have to figure out how do we get the younger consumers to that food and wine culture, right? And know that it's important. A lot of people it's easier to pop open an RTD, or it's much cheaper to have a beer. And so that's still a concern. And I think some of that, the pandemic was so shocking that it changed a lot of people's behaviors. And so I think we're still I think there's a lot of shifting happening, but I think it's going to continue to shift, and hopefully we can shift some of that back. And there's a trend right now around the better for you category, and wine's pretty good for us. Even though they want to put labels that tell us to give us this cancer on it, but that's alcohol in general. In terms of alcohol, right? It's from grapes. There's great phenols in there. The French have, right? The French paradox. We've seen that this lifestyle and moderation can be good for us, and we need to kind of figure out how to talk about that again. And I love when we talked about the sustainability stuff, but that's one of the things about being a native Oregonian, that's always been important to me, and I do love that people walk the talk in Oregon, and there's even more shifting towards organic and more of that. But we need to tell people, right? Tell people that how the wines are being produced, and that it is better for you, Yeah.
Better than a White Claw? How can that be possible? So kind of one question to sort of wrap it up. I'm curious now, your entire career has revolved around, in some way, around selling wine. I'm curious, what sells wine? How do you sell wine? What is important about it? And going forward, how will we sell wine again?
Isn't that like the magic bullet if everybody knew and it would be that hard? I mean, it's like selling anything, right? I always talk about, what's the why? Why? What is for the consumer, the buyer, what's in it for them? Not the, not that this is a Pinot Noir, but like, why, what is it? And so I think you have to always take it from either that consumer's perspective, that buyer's perspective. You have to understand their business, right? So if it's a buyer, how is this making the restaurant money? How is this making the store money? Because that ultimately, it's a business, right? Everything is a business and they have to be successful. Obviously, you want to be part of that success also. So understanding margins, understanding how distributors do pricing, understanding, all of those pieces and all of those channels. DTC, right? We didn't even talk about DTC at all, but understanding, the business side of it is important. It's a necessity. It's like it used to be, right? Oh, we sell wine? Or like a lot of the interviews, right? Well, we make wine and someone will figure out how to sell it, which is like one of those things that it doesn't work, right? But it's how we expect all wine has to be good, right? Everyone, those basic expectations are higher now. The product has to be good. You have to understand business. You have to understand your own business, their business, like 3-tier, right? The distributor, the restaurant or the retailer, and then ultimately the consumer also. I mean, it's been really hard, right? A lot of cost of goods have been going up, and then there's all this talk about tariffs, and I mean, there's a lot of things to be fearful about right now. But going back to those, basic business economic principles, right? Supply and demand. So great, your bottles and your cork prices went up, makes sense, you pass that along. But you can't expect that you're gonna raise your price and you're not gonna sell less. Like, that's a basic business, fundamentals, and so I think that's part of it. I mean, we have to continue to tell the story, and continue to differentiate, right? I mean, that's one of the pieces is that there's a lot of wineries. What's your story? How do you connect? And those are all obviously very important. But I think that's the secret sauce, right? I think, there were a few years ago, some folks, like Danny Brager, who was at Nicholson, and who's the guy at Silicon Valley Bank?
Oh,
You know what I'm talking about?
I do know who you're talking about. Christian?
Nope, that's Wineglass. But Christian's a great one too. He might have been in on that also. Rob, yes, thank you, yes. They did a lot of legwork and they got some federal grants. And basically what the idea is, like the Got Milk campaign, right? Where like you promote milk as a category, right? They got all these efforts together to basically promote wine as a category. And to kind of, who knows, it wasn't like going to be Got Wine, but that idea. And at least one big winery squashed it. And it would have been perfect timing because right now, right, that's really what's needed is that type of an organization to be like, oh, this is how we foster these relationships with the next generation and get interest in wine and talk about wine in general, not just a certain brand. And so that was really a missed opportunity. And I that opportunity is gone. And I know that group of people won't do it again. And so, I know that they've shared information. So whoever's listening to this, you should find some people. They will give you the information. Go get the plan. And we still need to do that as an industry in general, because it's an issue. And I don't think that one brand is going to fix it. And even one industry, right? Even our industry, right? I don't think you're going to just get the Oregon wine industry to figure it out either. So, it's silver bullet. I would be very rich if I had that. Here's the one thing, right? But yeah. I think that the only thing else I wanted to say was, our industry, wine, spirits, beer, non-alcoholic, whatever it is, right? The people are really important, right? I think I think a lot of us do this for the people. And so just remember, I always say, vote with your dollars, right? And I do that, right? That we dine at restaurants with the people that we really like, and we buy wine, people that we really like, and continue to do that, right? And you need to have that frame of mind, because that's the only thing we can do as a consumer. And all of us are consumers, even if we're in the industry or not. We're consumers, right? We spend money, and so vote with your dollars and support those, and all parts of your life, right? But support the businesses that align with your goals, right? With your future vision, with sustainability. I think maybe that's even more relevant right now because we're in really uncertain times with what's going on in our government. But yeah, vote with your dollars, please.
All questions I have for you. Anything I didn't ask that I should have? Anything else we wanted to cover here? The list is covered.
I think, yes. Oh my gosh, yes. Thank you for having me. Thank you for listening. This was a lot of information.
This is fantastic information. This is awesome.
Oh, good.
This was great.
Good.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing. Thanks. Welcome back to Linfield.
Thank you.
Thank you for taking the time, and we'll go ahead and let you off the hook.
All right. Thank you.
Awesome.